Welcome back. The next panel is in partnership with Movember and is particularly relevant at the moment. The importance of talking and using connections for when things are tough and when we're facing loneliness really can't be underestimated. We really are stronger together.
Thank you, Kate. And this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit around Stronger Together, why social connection is so important and how we can improve the very act of connection and friendship. So on the panel this afternoon, I have Maher from Movember and Ben Bidwell, the Naked Professor, joining us for a conversation around this issue. I thought I'd just start by setting the scene. For me, connection is all important. It's a really big part of the work we do at Movember, concentrating on improving men's health. And when we think about men living healthier, happier, longer lives, I think the research points unequivocally to the role of connection and the importance of friendship throughout our lives. If you haven't read it or watched the TED Talk, I would highly encourage going to have a look at the professor's speech on the Harvard study of adult development. It's an 80-year-long study, one of the longest longitudinal studies in the world, that has been tracking the same men since the Great Depression, and there are 19 of them still alive in their 90s today. And that study set out to understand what were the great predictors of a healthy, happy, long life. And at the age of 50, the men who went on to live those long and happy lives into their 80s were not the men with the strongest genes or the greatest IQ or the greatest bank balance. It was actually the men with the strongest connections in their lives. And I think that study fundamentally underpins a huge amount of work when we think about well-being, mental health, physical health, and our overall purpose as human beings. So without further ado, I will get each of the panelists to introduce themselves. Ben, I'll ask you first, maybe just tell our viewers this afternoon who you are and why you've joined us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name's Ben Bidwell, and I guess in the world we live in, as you've already sort of referred to, I'm known as the Naked Professor, which is meant to be some kind of catchy Instagram handle, I think. The idea of that is that for me, the message is all about being vulnerable, allowing yourself to bare your soul, to remove the masks, to let all of you be seen. And it's a journey that I've been on as a man. I hid myself for a long time. And so my message is very much about allowing all of you to be seen and welcoming all of who you are. And I work as a coach in that capacity. And connection is a massive part of the work that I do. So it's a pleasure to be part of this conversation.
Thanks, Ben. And over to you, Brendan, to give us a little snapshot as to where you're calling from and who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and hi, Ben. Look, my name is Brendan Maher. I'm the Global Director of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention at Movember. Look, Movember really believes in the power of social connection. We talk a lot about social and emotional scaffolding, and connection really provides that. And I've been lucky to have spent a good part of my career working in the mental health and suicide prevention space. And particularly in 6 years I had with an organisation before Movember, which focused very much on strengthening peer-to-peer support and providing people with an opportunity and some guidance on getting alongside someone they were concerned about to be a better mate. And I really saw, the real value in our capacity as human beings to get alongside each other and be there for one another. So I really believe in the power of connection, and I think the payoff from being connected and being strongly connected can be quite profound.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. That idea of, Brendan used this language when he first joined Movember, of emotional scaffolding, and I just think it's a lovely way of understanding why we need to invest in friendship, connection, and that sort of togetherness around us, so that when tough times come, and we've all been through that in various forms over the last 12 months, and you have those moments of loneliness and isolation, that you've got people who you can pick up the phone to. And I think just to check in on how the last 12 months have been for you, Ben, it's been a really difficult year. We've got Brendan calling in from Melbourne in Australia, who's had a different experience to what we've had here in London. But I guess we all bring our own experiences to the call. So how has the last 12 months been for you, and how important has connection been?
Thank you. Yeah. it's been a roller coaster. Depending on which day you ask me, my answer can be entirely different. Right now, I'm very much at peace. This has become, I know it's a cliche, but it's become the norm. And we're very adaptable as human beings, and I'm used to the surroundings. I live alone. I miss connection, but it's also quite comfortable now. There aren't many challenges for me outside of earning money, which I think has impacted a lot of us. But I have 24/7 to myself. I'm not really getting out of my comfort zone. I'm not really expanding, and that's where my challenges lie. I don't feel as alive as perhaps I'd like to be. I don't feel like I'm growing as much as I'd like to be. But I can't complain. I'm content. I'm fortunate, and this year has brought me a lot of opportunity to dive deeper into things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. And with that, I'm excited for a better future.
Yeah, I think we all bring. I'm glad that you were honest then and spoke to that vulnerable position. It depends on the day of the week when someone asks, doesn't it? At the moment, there are days where I think I'm going to crack at the seams, and there are other days where I feel like I've actually achieved something today, and today was a good day. And otherwise, I would have had to get on the train this morning, and I would have been racing back for an evening call. And today's actually been pretty stable. So I think being, as you said at the start, being vulnerable and open about how we're all feeling, what we're experiencing, and those experiences are so different. Like your experience living on your own, I live in a house with 5 people, my mother-in-law and my children, teenage children, and my husband, and that's a different experience entirely. And there are moments where I wish I lived alone like you, and then there are other moments where I think I wouldn't have gotten through it had I not had that noise and chaos. So I think we've all got our own experiences. Brendan, you bring a different experience. You've been through severe lockdown in Melbourne, like what we are in now, but you've also come out the other side and life is almost normal, except for the bubble that is, the Australian borders at the moment. You can't leave the big red island.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and I'm doing okay. In a lot of ways, I've got a lot to be grateful for, and I really believe in gratitude. And I'm very, very mindful of people I'm close to that have done it tough and been impacted by job loss and grief. Grief's a really hard one at the moment, particularly when we don't have the traditional ceremonial ways perhaps to say goodbye to someone that we've lost. And I think I've seen that being really pronounced and profound in the last sort of 6 months or so. Juggling work and family, life is still happening around this pandemic. It's just got a very different lens on it, I suppose. But look, I've enjoyed aspects of it. I've actually enjoyed being able to reconnect with mates who I hadn't seen for a while, because we catch up on a Friday on Zoom, and some old school friends coming into an environment and reconnecting people I hadn't seen for years, which seems ironic when when we've got this sort of physical distance, but we're finding new ways to reconnect in a lot of ways. So there's been many positives out of it. I mean, it's going to look good in the rear vision mirror. There's no doubt about that. And it'll be a bumpy road out, but I really think that I'm really hopeful that we can be, we can look to the future with some hope and optimism, and learn from this experience.
And as we think about that important piece, that connection piece and being together, and I think you're right, I think the road out is bumpy, but we can see it now. We can see that road. I guess for me, those really sort of darker moments, those more difficult moments, I have forced myself to pick up the phone and speak to a friend, even if it was often it's the last thing I feel like doing when I'm in that moment. But I have, I guess, the extraordinary privilege of doing this job and knowing how important that is. And a lot of people don't see that as a mechanism for health and well-being. We know loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking and alcoholism. So that idea of sitting in that loneliness and I guess festering in that loneliness, how do we help people? How do we give people actions and actionable moments to really reach out and step beyond that uncomfortable place of picking up the phone and making that time? Either of you happy for an answer on that one? I'm sure you've both got ideas.
I'll jump in, Brendan, if this is something I'm really passionate, if you don't mind. It's a massive one for me, because I as a man, I'm conscious that if I reach out to a friend and I kind of say, how are you really? Talk to me. What's going on? It's almost, as a man, it can almost be patronizing. It's almost like, well, you're almost suggesting there's something wrong with me by asking it that way, because it's so uncommon. One thing that I've really tried to embrace is when people do ask me how I am, is to set my own precedent and to share from the off in it, and owning not looking for sympathy, not asking for someone to save me, but acknowledging the truth of what's inside of me, to give permission to other people to do that back to me. Because otherwise, as men, we don't like to be made to feel weak, through questioning. We don't like to be made to feel weak in any capacity, but if there's a leading question that suggests it's trying to take us on a journey that we're already appearing weak, then it can make us shy away even more. So from my perspective, we can't force anyone to do anything, but we can embody what we hope to see in other people ourselves, and to allow them to come forward in the same capacity. So yeah, really speak my truth and own that myself first and foremost.
Yeah, I love that, Brendan. I know you'll echo some of that idea of sharing your own vulnerability brings a vulnerability to the table. So I'll let you speak, Brendan, to how you think that moment, can be progressed and happen.
Yeah, look, 100%. I think you can really open the floodgates when you start to share some of the realities of how perhaps the last, the pandemic and the associated life that's happening around you is perhaps causing you worry or concern or stress. In any way, no one's been immune from that with the last 12 months. I guess from a more practical perspective, in terms of harnessing connection, a few years ago we did some research for the former organisation I worked for, and it was Australian-based research, but we found out that adults were spending on average 42 hours a week on their devices, either watching TV or on their computer. And so we kind of forced ourselves at that time to think, what if we quarantined one of those hours a week to make a connection or reconnect with someone who perhaps we have lost contact with or haven't been very good at staying connected with. I think it's about making those opportunities and creating those opportunities. Like when you're driving somewhere on a long drive, I'm not saying you should use your cell phone in the car, but hopefully you've got hands free. Use that time to call someone, just out of the blue, and check in and say, look, I was thinking about you. We haven't spoken for a while. How you going? How's life? Those kind of things at the right moment in time can mean a huge amount to someone. And I think, I do think we have opportunities. I don't think saying we haven't got time is a good enough excuse. We just have to, I think, sometimes reappropriate a bit of our time and be disciplined, I think, in ensuring that we can keep those connections buoyant.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's about prioritising it. We know that when we look at the research, particularly, obviously our focus at Movember is men, we see that men don't prioritise their relationships. They get to the middle years of their life and look around, and maybe something's difficult, they've lost their job or their relationship's breaking down, and they realise they don't really have many friends, very connections. Those friends are in their youth and they drop off, and we see women, I guess, prioritise and nurture those relationships in a different way. So a big part of our work is really focusing on the value, the importance of friendship, the health and well-being benefits of friendship. It's good to spend time with your mates. It's good for you, kind of thing. Spend time with people who make you feel good. So I think, Ben, you touched on this a little bit, but that idea of giving yourself permission, I think, is really important, to say that actually my friendships are valuable and something I want to invest in alongside all the other things I'm giving my time to, whether that be my family and my career and other things. I think it's a big step towards that. I think the other thing is recognising in friends when they're not doing so well, and we do a lot of work spotting the signs, and men exhibit those signs differently. We see men use language like I'm stressed rather than I'm depressed, or men don't tend to say they're anxious or worried. They tend to say they're not sleeping or something's really working them up. And so I think recognizing some of those signs is really important, and then being able to hold that space with a friend, asking, as both of you just said, that second and third question, going a bit deeper than just that bouncing from, yeah, everything's great, yeah, the kids are good, see the footy on the weekend kind of conversation. How do we dive a bit deeper and unpack what's really going on? So I think being able to listen and hold that moment is all important. It's probably one of the greatest gifts you can give a person, is to listen to them. And I think you said, Ben, to recognise that we don't have to have the answers in that moment. In fact, the answers aren't even really required. So for everybody joining us this afternoon, I'd encourage you to reach out to somebody who might be looking like they're not doing so well, or doing fine, but you just want to cement that connection so that when we come out of this, you start thinking about who you're going to see, and what that build back better looks like. I think there's some language around that, and how can we make sure we're, to Brendan's point, looking in that rear view mirror, we're all going to reminisce in years to come as to this moment we've had, and how do we hold on to that togetherness. So I guess, Ben, have you seen any changes, any shifts in your clients? Are you seeing, I guess, trends come through in the way people are treating those connections in their lives? Are they treating them with more care, or are they harder during this time?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd love to just come to that in 1 second. I'd love to just pick on something you said really quickly, because I think it was such an important point, particularly from a men's perspective, in that I think part of the problem with the how are you conversation amongst men is that because we do look to fix, if someone does share their truth and they say, hey, it's not so great at the moment, the person listening is like, how can I fix this? I don't really know what to say. I'm not sure how I can fix it. I need to get out of this conversation abort. Let's talk about the football. and the point is that we don't have to fix. That there is, it's the world that we live in is that there are challenges presented all the time, particularly at the moment. And if someone's having a bad day, it doesn't define them. It means they're having a bad day, just like someone else could be anywhere at any point. It's natural. So like you just said, I think it's such an important point for us men to lean into. It's just this idea of just listening and not having the answers, and just saying, hey, I'm here to hear however you're feeling, and it's welcome. And it's, in fact, it's beautiful. It allows me to see you a bit deeper. So thank you for the honor in sharing your truth. So I just think that's really important. In terms of the changes, I from what I've seen, it's really driven people either way. For some people, believe it or not, this has been a little bit of a gift. For some of my friends, it's like, with friends and clients, it's been what an opportunity I've had to, I've never got to know my wife, and to spend time with my kids like I do has just been just a beautiful experience. And I'm so grateful to have this time. Obviously, it's without challenges. It's not without challenges, but it's been a gift in many ways. For others, if there is a lot of stress and it is challenging, perhaps in whatever form, kids themselves, as you all know, Sarah, bring their own challenges in many different forms, but it can almost accentuate and blow that whole thing up, because getting to the office is no longer possible. That just gave you that space to breathe. And even, the commute there is your chance to be with yourself for a moment in a day that you often don't get that. So for me, this whole period has just accentuated whatever has been within. It's perhaps blown it up to another level. And, life is not always easy. So it's gone from not easy to, I wish I could go back to just it not being easy, because right now it's really, really challenging. But yeah, in amongst all that, there's all sorts of different things that are coming up, from financial pressures to lack of sleep because we're not moving, we're stuck in between the same walls, we're not experiencing connection, we're now spending 24 hours a day with our wife, and that's bringing all the arguments that we managed to escape from alive, and pressures on our relationships. So it's all those stuff everything is heightened, really.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's the heightening of things. Brendan, for you?
Look, I totally agree, Ben. It was I was just having a bit of a reflection there that my wife and I kind of joke about the fact that it's lucky we actually really like each other, because we've had to spend so much time together. And it's very true. Look, I think I just wanted to talk a little bit about what you were saying there, Ben, with regards to fixing. I think often a barrier to reaching out to support someone that we're worried about, a guy that we might be worried about, is we don't know what to say. What if I ask him, look, how are you going? And he says, not good. And where do I go with that? And, I think one of the really important things, or they deny it. They say, look, everything's fine, but you know that they're not. And one of the important things to leverage off what Sarah was saying before is to make an observation about why it is that you're concerned about that person. Look, you haven't been returning my calls. It's just not like you, or you look really tired and low on energy, and you just don't seem your normal self. I think that proof point's a really, really good opportunity to then enable that person to open up and share. And like you said, Ben, we at Movember have adopted a conversation model. It's ALEC is the acronym, as in Alec Baldwin, ALEC, and it's ask, listen, encourage action, and check in. It's not, there's no F in there. It's not fix. It's not give solution or a list of things that the person needs to solve their problem. In fact, giving someone a list of things they need to do to fix things can often put them under more pressure. It's often said the things that keep us up at night aren't as bad once we've shared them with a friend. And I guess as guys, you know, continuing to create those opportunities. And it's easy to say, I can sit here and say it very, very quickly. I have to be disciplined about it myself. It takes effort and energy. But as I've said probably 3 times, I think the payoff can be really profound for both us and for the person that we're reaching out and staying connected with.
Yeah, there's that reciprocity thing, isn't there? Of, you know, you think you go into a conversation maybe trying to support a friend or help them out. Actually, you feel better having had the conversation and being brave enough to hold that space. We talk a lot about holding that awkward space, and it is awkward. There's no denying that. We'd all rather probably go, oh, you're fine, good, let's get on to the next conversation. But actually holding that space with someone, that intimacy and vulnerability is what builds a rich relationship for life, I think, and is really what we're all here for. It's that human, you know, we're hardwired for connection, as a friend of mine, Judy Chu, says, and it's absolutely the truth, isn't it? We are hardwired for it. So tapping into that is really important. I was reflecting last night, actually, thinking about this call. You know, when I think about the big kind of health things, physical health, mental health, social health, they all take an element of effort. You know, I don't want to go for a walk or do that 30 minutes of exercise often, but I feel better when I've done it. And I don't necessarily want to sit down and do some meditation I don't have 10 minutes for, but I feel better when I do it. And social health is the same. You know, taking that time, making that effort, I think the rewards are tenfold. And we know from research that those are the things that build the happy, healthy, long life. So as we close out, thank you for a great conversation around connection and the importance of friendships in our lives. I'll throw to each of you just to close us out, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Brendan first.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Look, I think anything that we can do to combat loneliness and isolation is only going to make us a stronger and more connected society. I think, you know, over the last 12 months, acknowledging that it has been, you know, a really difficult time, opportunities where we can share our own experiences, share our own fears, our own challenges with others can really, you know, encourage us to open up and you know, get alongside each other. And I just really, really hope that this time in 12 months we're looking back at this experience and we've learned something positive from it, and we really have garnered some real insight around how important connection is, because it's thrown a real curveball at us and we've had to rethink things. And yeah, hopefully we can come out of this stronger. Thanks, Brendan. Ben?
Yeah, I'm with you, Brendan. I'd love to chuck a quote, one of my favourite quotes out there, which says, your wound is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. Because it takes away the blame. If any of us are struggling, and in relevance to this conversation, acknowledging our flaws, which we all have, allows for connection. It allows people to see the human experience, the truth of who we really are. It allows them into our inner world, which is a beautiful thing. It might seem scary, and I'm not saying do it to the bus driver as you get on the bus, but choose the people who you feel close with, people you want to allow you to see you more deeply, and acknowledge that challenges that you have are not your fault, but talking about them is the beginning of your healing. And if you're willing to do that, then the growth is endless, connection deepens, life comes more alive. It's a beautiful experience. It's not what we've been taught to shy away from.
Well, thank you both.